Hi everyone. This is the voice behind the noise. And I am Myron. Russia has achieved limited territorial gains and suffered irreparable losses since its military operation in Ukraine 1 month ago. But even if Vladimir Putin made a deal and chose to cease fire today, however, as expected, this conflict would be far from over. Although this is nothing ordinary people want, misery won't come to an end so soon. The West contributes themselves to the fabrication that Russia is evil while the West represents justice. While doing all they can to condemn Russia and impose sanctions on the country, the West tried everything to rid themselves of all the responsibility for such crisis. During the process, Russia's economy is hit indeed, but the result may be far from satisfactory, because the economy conditions in that country was not good without any sanctions, so after the sanctions it seems that the effect is not as expected. However, what is important to the US is probably other than what has happened to Russia, instead, negative consequences unexpected. As a result, journalists from the US began to doubt whether this is a good choice to interfere with Ukraine and Afghanistan. On March 24, the US New York Times published an article discussing the misjudgment of the US intelligence agencies under the title "Why the United States Was Wrong on the Wars in Ukraine and Afghanistan." Apart from this, increasingly more people have become aware that the West is turning Ukraine into a second Afghanistan. We have already witnessed what the US military entrance has brought to Afghanistan, while those countries still wouldn't give up imposing such destiny on Ukraine. The US receives also wide criticism. Why do we consider the West as making Ukraine next Afghanistan? Well, here is the thing. 7 months ago, the Afghan Taliban entered the capital Kabul without resistance. At the time, most Afghan government forces had given up their uniforms and weapons, and the president fled to the UAE. For Afghanistan, US intelligence agencies had predicted that the then Afghan government and its troops would last at least 6 months after the US withdrawal. As a result, the world saw the Kabul moment. The article also writes that, in fact, the more the United States invests in training partner forces, the less US officials know about their capabilities. For Ukraine, intelligence officials had thought Kyiv would fall within 2 days. Then, the US media seriously justified the misjudgment, claiming that it is difficult for intelligence agencies to accurately assess the fighting spirit of these countries, and there are many subjective factors. The article even claimed that when interfering in the Taiwan issue, the United States had already faced similar problems and calculated the so-called fighting spirit of Taiwan independence elements. It seems that it is not only the US intelligence agencies who can't understand the direction of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. On the 18th, the US Washington Post published an article saying that the Russian-Ukrainian negotiations may be the key to ending the current conflict, but whether to make concessions to Russia or fight to the end, the complex signal sent by the Ukrainian president and his aides, let the West is confused about his ultimate goal. The article said that this may also be a problem for Ukraine itself. On the one hand, Zelensky, as a wartime president, is overrated, and if he makes concessions to Russia, he will bear the infamy of betraying the country. In addition, some of the NATO countries in Eastern Europe do not want Ukraine to make too many compromises, and it is even less likely that the West will immediately lift sanctions against Russia just because of a paper agreement. What's more, the US government also hasn't forgot to stretch its influence to Taiwan, China. As for the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, some foreign politicians hyped up the mainland's military threat to Taiwan, not only solidarity with Taiwan, but even clamoring to provide Taiwan with weapons to assist in confrontation. The spokesperson of the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council, Zhu Funlian, responded on March 16. Said that the Taiwan issue is purely China's internal affairs. For some time, some foreign anti-China forces have indulged in the Cold War mentality, fanning the flames and undermining cross-strait relations. The DPP authorities are willing to be the pawn of an external force to control China with Taiwan for the self-interest of one party, and they don't care about the safety of the 23 million Taiwan compatriots at all. Now, whether in mainland China or in Taiwan, more and more people can reach a consensus that the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait depends on the peaceful development of cross-strait relations, not external forces. Today, when the mainland of the motherland is increasingly powerful, there is no way out for relying on foreign countries to seek independence, and using Taiwan to control China is also doomed to failure. In recent years, although the United States is clear that NATO must not accept Ukraine, the United States still insists on pushing Ukraine to join NATO. In this regard, Russia has repeatedly made security demands and has drawn a red line to NATO, demanding that Ukraine should not become a member of NATO. However, the United States not only did not respond to Russia's demands, but also tried to push Russia into a corner. In the end, the United States and Russia were in the security structure. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine continued to intensify, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine officially broke out. Now, this military conflict has caused a major impact on Russia, Ukraine, and other countries, and the global economic development has become more and more uncertain. This once again proves that engaging in military games and political confrontation in the relationship between major powers will only lead to more turbulence in the world, harm the interests of all countries in the world. So, how to settle down such issues? Is it wise to let the West continue to turn countries into disasters? The answer is apparent: no. But how? Here is what we think. The international situation has entered a period of turbulence and change, witnessing the world is undergoing profound changes unseen in a century. To support the world towards multipolarization and the democratization of international relations, it has always been the right way to maintain the purposes of the UN Charter and the basic norms governing international relations. Only by always upholding objectivity and fairness in international affairs, and always standing on the right side of history, can it conform to the trend of history. Okay, that's all for today. See you in the next video.